When I started the process with David, we were very careful to give ourselves a completely blank canvas and have no real sort of expectations as to how this should sound, and be driven very much by what's on screen and the feeling that you get from the interaction of these characters. It's very powerfully emotional, so it wasn't really a choice we made in the abstract to make it thematic. It was driven very much by what's on screen. Funny enough, when we started the process, fortunately he brought me on board before they even were shooting, we were like, it's going to be a very minimal, very, what does shadows in music sound like? And that did find a way into the final, but honestly, the key thing was suddenly seeing these powerful performances from Teresa and Maria. Suddenly it was like, okay, this needs a thematic score. This needs an emotional core. This is at heart driven by a family drama. There is some incredibly powerful, visceral scares, and this movie stays with you. And it's also very entertaining and very fun movie to watch. But it's driven so much by the truth of what it means to have a mother who's mentally ill and won't take a medication, and what does that mean to the children. And there's something really honest, and you have to, I found like I had to come up with a melody which summed up this feeling of a family that was lost, almost like a tune that didn't have a home. A melody which kind of, you think it's going in one direction, but it keeps confounding those expectations.
What you do to me and so many people, it's just so fascinating. Could you give me an image as to what you're doing when you're first watching the film? Like, do you have like a piano there and you're playing with it? Do you just start writing music down? Like, is it just in your head? I find it so fascinating. If you give us a little image.
Yeah, well, typically what happens is I'm in the shower, I'm driving, and I'm thinking about the movie, and suddenly there'll be a spark of an idea. It can be a few notes of the melody, or sometimes it's the whole tune, or sometimes it's just the feeling a melody would give you, and you have to sort of find the notes. But once I've got that it can be just a tiny idea. I carry a little sketchbook around with me, and I just tend to scribble it down or sing it into my iPhone. My iPhone's full of completely weird sounding sometimes I can't even decipher because I'm such a terrible singer. But it's important to always have, I have lots of sketches everywhere, and then I sit down, I write at a computer, and we have this fantastic situation now as composers where we have every sound you can imagine available to us right there, so you can very quickly create orchestral mock-ups and carefully get into like full orchestration, which I then present to the director, and we go from there. And I tend to make piano sketches first if it's a melodic score, but sometimes a lot of this score is also driven by sound and by texture, and so I spent a lot of time creating atmospheric sounds almost, but they were still musical, that sort of permeate through the score. So each movie's different. They always require something completely new. It's very important never to have any preconceptions when you start a new score.
And just to clarify, you see the movie first before you start doing all that? You see with, obviously has no music, it's just the words?
Normally, yeah. Okay. Normally you see a rough cut, maybe there's some temp music there. But if you're lucky, and it's happened to me a few times now, I get invited to the set and spend a few days just watching the process and really getting inside the actors' process, because ultimately if the music isn't true to the characters and the performances, it's very hard to gel with the movie. You got to be an integral part of the storytelling in such a way that the audience doesn't notice you're doing it somehow. It has to be at one almost with just with the movie and with the director's vision. There's that kind of, that's a luxury, but more often than not, you see the cut and you go from there.
You have a really cool job. Really cool job. Now, are there any movies you've grown up watching, horror movies that you loved, or are you a big horror movie fan?
I have to be honest, I'm really not. Okay. I'm not a horror movie fan at all. It's kind of crazy. I mean, most of my work is in thrillers and dramas, but as a composer, you've got to have a completely open mind for genres. And actually, I've been recently asked to do a couple of horrors or movies which have horror in them, and it's actually very interesting as a genre because there are so many expectations for the sound, and I love to confound expectation and push the boundaries and push what if we tried this, and be kind of bold about stuff. And that, I think, is I've been lucky enough to. David gave me the freedom to do that with this score. I've been obsessed with cinema since I was 5. We were going every single week as a family, and I was lucky to grow up in the 80s and the heyday of Spielberg and Williams and Goldsmith and all these unbelievable classical that just inspire you at that age.
That's so cool. And last question, what inspires you every day? What is it is there one thing, is there a song, is there a book, is there something that just gets you going for the day?
My wife, she's pretty inspirational. Well, mostly because she puts up with me.
Oh, thank you.
It's pretty tough being married to a composer.
How's it going?
But I think, we're very lucky as musicians because there's so much genius music around, and all I need to do is sit down and play through some Bach preludes, or this is just Shostakovich symphonies, or any movie score that's worth its salt from the last 20 years, and then your imagination is set on fire. So, my God, we're very lucky as composers.
That's wonderful. Well, congratulations! You're super successful for a reason because you love what you do, and it translates into your work. So, congratulations! Have fun tonight.